This is the.
We'll declare the meeting public. Agenda item number 1 is apologies. No apologies have been received so far. I think I was talking to Stephen yesterday, and he said the only difficulty with him is that he's caught with welfare stuff and stuff in the chamber. So, and as he's on his own, it's a wee bit tricky for him. So, he may or may not be in. So, very good, William.
Paul Frew has been ill, but he's hoping to be here.
I say, all right.
Hoping to be here. Paul
Right.
Frew. Yeah.
Okay. Next item is agenda item number 2, declaration of interest. A copy of the register of interest of Paul Given and Martin Willer are at pages 5 and 7 of the packs. And then move over to the next item. Yes, Charlie Martin.
Might be a good time, Chair, to declare an interest in a family member working for Tourism Ireland. I do some business with Tourism Ireland as well, as a sponsor of conferences I hold.
Oh, right. Okay, that's grand. And note that in the register as well. So, agenda item number 3 is the draft minutes. A copy of the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of February 2015. That's at page 10. So, if members are content enough with the detail and accuracy of the minutes, agreed? Yep.
Agreed, yeah.
Yep. Now, in regard to the chairperson's business, I've received an invite to that's page 17, Northern Ireland Hotels Federation, to myself to attend the Tourism Summit on Friday the 20th of March at 1:30 in the Hilton Hotel Belfast. Now, unfortunately, I'm not able to attend. It's a bad day of the week, that one. So, unless anyone else wants to attend from the committee, well, leave it like if anybody wishes to attend from the committee and it's convenient for them if they notify the clerk. Okay, thanks. Next item then is agenda item number 5, which is an oral briefing from Tourism Ireland. That's at page 19 in members' packs. So, briefing the committee today from Tourism Ireland is Niall Gibbons, the Chief Executive, and Shane Clark, Director of Corporate Services. You're both very welcome indeed to the committee. But maybe you could clarify before we start. There seems to have been some delay in the papers arriving with us for presentation today. So, could you have you any idea yourselves as to why that was the case?
Where of any delay wasn't brought to my attention.
Well, it is now.
Sure.
So, but when did you provide your papers to the department then?
A fortnight ago, I think we.
Oh, right. Okay, that's okay. That absolves yourselves of the. Do we know where the issue is then? Okay, thanks very much for that. Maybe we need to raise that with the permanent secretary, Jim. Okay, now you're very welcome indeed. Obviously, we've been keeping an eye on your activities through Twitter and other media. So this is your opportunity. It's good to see you back again. Three way from we've had you before the committee. So, do you want to make your opening statement, and then we'll take questions and answers from members of the committee, please? Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, members of the Enterprise Trade and Investment Committee, good morning and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Niall Gibbons and I'm Chief Executive at Tourism Ireland, and I'm joined by Shane Clark, who is Director of Corporate Services and Policy at Tourism Ireland. As members will know, Tourism Ireland is the organisation responsible for marketing the island of Ireland overseas. It was established as one of the 6 areas of cooperation under the framework of the Good Friday Agreement. Our remit is to increase tourism to the island of Ireland to support Northern Ireland realise its tourism potential. We work closely with the 2 tourist boards on the island, Tourism Northern Ireland and Fáilte Ireland, and indeed with our partners in the tourism industry at home and abroad in delivering on our remit. Since Tourism Ireland was established, almost 21 million overseas visitors have come to Northern Ireland, generating £4.4 billion for the economy against a total investment in overseas marketing of about £175 billion. Tourism is responsible for in excess of 5.2% of GDP here and supports 43,000 jobs. That is 1 job in every 18 in Northern Ireland. And the tourism story today is a positive one. Figures published by NISRA just last month show that overseas visitors to Northern Ireland increased by 3% for the January to September period, but more importantly, overseas holidaymakers increased by 11% compared with the same 9-month period in 2013. It was particularly positive to see growth of 12% in holidaymakers from Great Britain and 21% in holidaymakers from North America. In fact, holidaymakers now make up almost 30% of all visitors to Northern Ireland, more than doubling from 14% in 2002. Industry sentiment is also positive, with major attractions like Titanic Belfast reporting a 14% increase in overseas visitors to the attraction in 2014, almost 40,000 more compared to 2013, with visitors from North America and Great Britain in particular accounting for this increase. Tourism Ireland carries out extensive marketing campaigns in 22 markets overseas. Our major promotional effort is focused on those markets that offer the best return on investment: Great Britain, the United States, Germany, France, as well as Canada and Australia. In addition, we work in a further 16 markets across the world, including fast-growing markets like China and India. Each year, Tourism Ireland's global marketing campaigns reach hundreds of millions of potential visitors across the world. Promoting in the highly competitive global travel and tourism market is challenging at any time, but there are a number of important factors that have worked in our favour. Perceptions of Northern Ireland as a place to visit for holidays continues to improve. The Executive's continued investment in developments like Titanic Belfast and the Giant's Causeway Centre and its commitment to world-class events like the Open Golf Championship have helped put Northern Ireland in the international spotlight for all the right reasons. In delivering our extensive marketing campaigns overseas, Tourism Ireland works very closely with Tourism Northern Ireland to ensure our promotional themes overseas align with their development priorities for the industry, and that development decisions on the ground here take account of the current and future needs of overseas holidaymakers, an integrated collaborative approach in conjunction with our industry. In order to capitalise on the increasingly central role of the internet in travel and holiday planning, Tourism Ireland invests heavily in digital marketing. Our suite of international websites, Ireland.com, available in 30 markets and 10 different languages, attracts over 14 million unique visitors a year. We have grown our Facebook fan base to almost 3 million active fans today, which makes us the 4th largest tourist board in the world on the popular social media site. We are among the 2nd most popular European tourist boards on Twitter, with over 223,000 followers, and the 2nd most popular tourist board in the world on YouTube, with 17 million views. This strategy has positioned us well to work with a number of high-profile celebrities, such as British broadcaster Phil Spencer and astronaut commander Chris Hadfield, who have made a series of promotional videos for us, and also the American broadcasting giant HBO for Game of Thrones campaign, and a host of well-known international bloggers and broadcasters. Tourism Ireland also mobilises a hugely influential publicity machine in its 22 markets overseas, generating positive coverage for Northern Ireland worth an estimated £82 million a year in equivalent advertising value. This involves an extensive programme of media liaison with our database of 22,000 travel, lifestyle and special interest media across the world. We also run familiarisation visits in conjunction with Tourism Northern Ireland and through in-market press releases, e-signs, briefings and events. In addition to generating the kind of coverage for the destination that our budgets simply could not buy, this activity has also significantly enhanced overseas perceptions of Northern Ireland. 2014 brought another year of standout events, from the Grande Partenza of the Giro d'Italia, Tourism Ireland's groundbreaking partnership with HBO, leveraging the popularity of Game of Thrones, to participation in the Commonwealth Games. All of these exciting events helped to keep Northern Ireland in the global publicity spotlight last year for the best reasons. We also had a major focus on touring holidays in 2014, in particular highlighting the Causeway Coastal Route and the Wild Atlantic Way. Both stunning routes featured extensively in Tourism Ireland's television, print, online and cinema advertising in key markets. The routes were promoted to tens of millions of potential holidaymakers, travel and lifestyle media and traditional and online tour operators. Also, many overseas TV crews and other media were brought in to experience it for themselves, and both routes have been extremely well received. The Grande Partenza of the Giro d'Italia took place last May, and this highly anticipated event allowed us to bring a positive message and showcase our spectacular scenery to some 775 million viewers in 164 countries around the world. Our Giro campaigns reached millions of potential holidaymakers in Great Britain, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, the Nordic region and Australia, before, during and after the race. Tourism Ireland's publicity activity around the Grande Partenza alone generated global media exposure worth an estimated £12 million in equivalent advertising value. We also joined forces with American giants HBO, the creators of smash hit series Game of Thrones, in April. This was a groundbreaking social media advertising campaign which by mid-June had reached over 100 million Game of Thrones fans in markets including Great Britain, the United States, Canada, France and Germany. The campaign leveraged the incredible success of the HBO brand and the huge global popularity of Game of Thrones and allowed us to highlight the series' strong associations with Northern Ireland, where much of the filming takes place. Film and TV are widely recognised influencers of travel decisions, and we've established close working relationships with Northern Ireland Screen in this regard, and we look forward to working further with HBO this year. The Commonwealth Games took place in Glasgow last summer, and with Northern Ireland sending its largest ever Commonwealth Games team to take part, 117 athletes competing in 14 sports, Tourism Ireland took every opportunity to maximise the tourism potential of the Games. We produced an online film to highlight our extraordinary athletes from an extraordinary place, and we showcased it to an international audience on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Ireland.com. The film featured some of our athletes describing how Northern Ireland inspires them. It also starred some of our golfing heroes and featured spectacular aerial footage of the Causeway Coast, the Sperrins and the Belfast skyline, giving people a flavour of what to expect on a holiday here and encouraging prospective travellers to put golf here on their wish list. Tourism Ireland continued to build on the legacy of Derry Londonderry, UK City of Culture, through, for example, publicity, media and trade familiarisation visits, and through cooperative marketing activity with Ryanair, highlighting city breaks to Londonderry and festivals such as the Banks of the Foyle Halloween Carnival. Our diaspora continues to be a special focus for Tourism Ireland. We work closely with Northern Irish connections, and we also have actively promoted to those with Ulster Scots ancestry through, for example, participation in Stone Mountain Highland Games in Georgia each year. And last October, we undertook a promotional blitz in the southern US states of Georgia, North Carolina and Tennessee, targeting people of Ulster Scots descent. We were accompanied by chef Noel McNeill, musician and composer John Anderson, genealogy specialist Gillian Hunt, and historian Alistair McReynolds. Those with Scots-Irish surnames in the southern US states were also targeted through an email marketing campaign encouraging them to come home to the land of their ancestors and highlighting airline and holiday offers. Following a successful year in 2014, ambitious targets have been set for 2015. We aim to welcome almost 1.9 million visitors from overseas, representing growth of 6% over 2014, delivering £552 million to the economy in Northern Ireland, growth of over 9% in 2014. We are prioritising those markets that offer the best return in terms of promotional revenue and visitors, and will continue the rollout across all markets of the revised consumer segmentation that has worked well in Britain, the United States, Germany and France. Our best prospect visitors are being targeted more closely with the kind of holiday experiences, events and offers tailored to their interests and designed to trigger their must-go-now impulses. An extensive programme of promotions is already in train to attract overseas visitors this year, focusing on iconic attractions and experiences such as the Causeway Coastal Route, Titanic Belfast, the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre and the unique National Trust properties. City breaks to Belfast and Derry Londonderry are also a focus, and these priorities were discussed and agreed with Tourism Northern Ireland as part of our planning for 2015. Tourism Ireland kicked off its 2015 promotional drive with TV advertising campaigns for Northern Ireland in the US, Germany, France and a print and digital advertising partnership with The Telegraph and in Great Britain. We're already working hard to capitalise on the tourism potential of the Irish Open, which will be hosted in Royal County Down Golf Club this year, which received another boost late last week with the announcement that Sergio Garcia and Ernie Els will be joining the Irish Open field, and with the appointment of Darren Clarke as captain of the 2016 European Ryder Cup team. To give you just some examples of our activity, in the United States, we're joined by Graham McDowell to highlight the Irish Open at the recent PGA Merchandise Show in Orlando, and a new 60-second TV ad will air on the Golf Channel around the majors, kicking off with the Masters in April. In Great Britain, the Irish Open will be promoted at the Scottish Golf Show and through cooperative marketing in partnership with partners such as Golf Breaks and Your Golf Travel. Golf is the world's largest sports-related travel market, with wonderful ambassadors like Rory McIlroy, Graham McDowell, Darren Clarke and others who justifiably promote Northern Ireland as the home of champions. Continued product investment in projects like the Goblins Coastal Walk and Mount Stewart House and Gardens enhances our offering in the marketplace. We'll work hard to maximise the tourism potential of these attractions, as well as events such as the return of the tall ships to Belfast and the first Grand Fondo of the Giro d'Italia, which will take place in June. We will also be working closely with Eurosport to promote the Circuit of Ireland overseas in April. And I'm delighted to say that we'll be joining forces with HBO again this year with the Game of Thrones campaign scheduled to launch in April to coincide with Season 5 of the series. The high-yield business tourism sector is an extremely important element of our marketing efforts, and in 2015 we'll continue to build awareness overseas of Northern Ireland as a top business tourism destination, showcasing superb facilities on offer and highlighting the new facilities such as those coming on stream at the Waterfront Hall. Just earlier this month, representatives from Visit Derry and Visit Belfast joined Tourism Ireland at Confex, the largest annual event targeting meetings, incentive, conference and events industry in Great Britain. While the majority of our overseas visitors come from the core markets of Britain, America and Europe, we also have expanded our focus beyond these markets to look at the long-term opportunities presented by the fast-growing markets of the future, like China, India and the Middle East. Visitors from long-haul markets stay twice as long as the average holidaymaker and are more likely to travel through the island of Ireland and make significant economic contribution in numerous tourism sectors. Tourism Ireland and Visit Britain are working together now to promote the British-Irish visa scheme in China and India. The scheme was launched last October by Theresa May, the British Home Secretary, and by Francis Fitzgerald, the Irish Minister for Justice and Equality. And our sponsorship of the Irish cricket team in this year's Cricket World Cup will help to increase awareness in long-haul markets such as India, where cricket is enormously popular. As an island, convenient and competitive air and sea connectivity is vital if we are to continue to grow overseas tourism to Northern Ireland. In this context, it's worth pointing out that the number of inbound seats to Northern Ireland airports has actually declined in recent years. For example, in the summer of 2010, there were 107,000 seats per week into Northern Ireland airports. By the summer of 2014, that had declined to under 85,000 seats per week, a loss of 23,000 seats each week. By contrast, seats into the Republic of Ireland during this period have increased from 319,000 per week to 367,000 per week, an increase of 48,000. Securing new and extended air access services for Northern Ireland is a strategic priority, particularly from markets like Germany, France and Canada. To this end, we continue to work with airports and airlines to identify opportunities and case-make for new or extended services, and we in Tourism Ireland have a busy programme of cooperative activity in marketing with air and sea carriers in place for 2015. We were delighted to welcome the new services to Belfast from Verona, Amsterdam, Keflavik and Barcelona, and we're committed to working with partners to help drive demand on these new routes. We'll also continue to promote and help maintain vital existing routes. Members may be interested to learn that almost 1/4 of all overseas visitors to Northern Ireland now come via the Republic of Ireland, but if you exclude GB from that equation, the figure goes up to 60% coming via the Republic of Ireland. So it's clear that visitors from different markets and regions of the world use a variety of different routes to get here. In tandem with our work in supporting new and additional existing access services, Tourism Ireland has been actively incentivising overseas tour operators to encourage them to include more Northern Ireland tourism inventory in their programmes they sell overseas, so to stimulate incremental bed nights to Northern Ireland. To date, up to 700 traditional and online tour operators are featuring Northern Ireland, an increase of around 10% on 2014. Tourism Ireland will also fly in 100 top international tour operators to Northern Ireland in April this year to the annual Meet the Buyer workshops. The support of the Northern Ireland tourism industry is also vital for future tourism growth, and this year Tourism Ireland will present at least 250 different promotional opportunities to representatives of the industry and overseas trade partners, offering at least 15,000 ways for businesses to get involved and promote alongside us in key markets. Based on recent experiences, we would vote to see about 150 members, up from 118 last year, of the Northern Ireland tourism industry taking up these opportunities to build their own businesses overseas in the next 10 months. In the next few weeks, the tourism season will get underway across the world, and Tourism Ireland's Global Greening Initiative will once again turn the burn green to mark St Patrick's Day and put the island of Ireland in the global publicity spotlight. While over 100 iconic sites and landmarks from the London Eye and Nelson's Column in London to the Colosseum in Rome and the Leaning Tower of Pisa to the Niagara Falls, from the Sky Tower in Auckland to Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil and the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, with many others joining in. And here in Northern Ireland, I'm delighted to say that a number of our own icons have come on board, and I must compliment Titanic Belfast, Enniskillen Castle, the Guildhall in Derry Londonderry and the St Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick for joining in last year. The Global Greening Initiative generates at least £8 million in positive publicity for the island of Ireland during March, a key time for holiday planning and travel decisions. Chairperson and members of the committee, I hope this introductory statement has given you a flavour of the work of our Tourism Ireland in 2014 and for the year ahead, its collaboration with the tourism industry at home and in key markets, and its role in growing tourism from overseas for the economic benefit of all. Tourism is a £1.6 billion industry supporting 43,000 jobs, representing a significant return on public investment, and we are optimistic about the potential for growth in 2015 and the years ahead. Thank you, Chairperson. I'll be happy to take.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Thanks very much for that, and compliment you on your presentation there. 9% growth, I think you said, this year, based on last year's returns.
9% growth in revenue, yes. So that was the spend.
Could you maybe just expand how you intend doing that?
Well, what we're looking to do is build, really, I think, on a lot of the investment that has taken place, particularly in product development and attractions in tourism over the last number of years. We have a very focused campaign in 22 markets overseas. Obviously, the more important markets from a Northern Ireland perspective are Great Britain, most closer to home, but also United States and mainland Europe as well are the fastest outgrowing bound markets at the moment that give the greatest potential. We have new additional routes coming in this year as well, Liverpool into Belfast City. We've also got Vueling Airlines from Barcelona, a flight from Iceland, and it's to work with those carriers to encourage the inbound leg of those routes. But taking all the opportunities that are presented from the likes of Game of Thrones, with the likes of the Giro Gran Fondo, with the Irish Open, to leverage those big events to get a very positive message out there into the international marketplace that now is the time to come.
Right, but how specifically, what measures are you taking to do that? I know you're working with various operators and that. Specifically, how would you be actively going out and pursuing those and inviting them in? What's the... In other words, if I was to say to you, OK, we're going to do this, how are you doing it?
Well, it depends. Each market has a different strategic plan. So,
Exactly,
in Great Britain, for example, we'll be working across all channels. You'll be working across television, print, online, social media. We'll have relationships with traditional print media, and it will depend on the audience which you're targeting. So, for example, in the Great Britain market, there are two distinct segments which are the best prospects for coming to Ireland. First of all, are known as culturally curious. They tend to be people who tend to be in the 45-plus age bracket, tend to consume their media through more traditional means, like, for example, the Telegraph or the Guardian. So, advertising will be tailored towards those types of channels. The second type of audience are more social energisers, and I might stress they're not stag and hen parties, by the way. Social energisers are people who tend to be in the 25 to 45 age bracket, tend to consume their media through more social means, hence the importance of the online world through Facebook and Twitter. And it's also about working to encourage people how easy it is to get here. So ease of access is critical as well by both air and sea. So a series of online campaigns will also take place with the likes of Ryanair, Aer Lingus, Stena, across Great Britain through the course of the year. As we get into other markets, for example, I'm just taking a practical example of China, for example, the fastest outbound growing market in the world. 100 million Chinese people will take a trip abroad this year, but most of those are staying closer to home in places like Macau and Hong Kong. To promote the island of Ireland and China is trying to drive overall visitor numbers to 50,000 by 2017. And we have a very small budget in that marketplace, so that would involve working mainly with the travel trade and the media, encouraging the travel trade to encourage them to put Ireland in their brochures perhaps for the first time, and also media to encourage them to write more articles to try and build a brand and awareness of which there is very little in a market like China. So they're probably two extreme examples.
Right. Now, just drilling down on that, could you give me examples of what's being done in line of the marketing, those journals that you're seeking to attract, to write articles, that type of stuff, in those potential new markets? And then you mentioned those who are, notice an interesting phrase to use, but those who are culturally curious and social energisers. What particular appeal do both of those different markets find that Northern Ireland has for them?
Okay. On the first question, in relation to just, again, a couple of practical examples. The HBO campaign was an investment of £100,000. It allowed us, one of the first agencies ever to be allowed to use the HBO logo, very protective company about their brand. It reached an audience of 100 million people on Twitter. That's a reach that we could never have done in relation to the Game of Thrones campaign. Very much bringing this destination to an audience that wouldn't have been aware before about Game of Thrones being filmed here in Northern Ireland. And what we're starting to see now is the emergence as well of Game of Thrones tours that are taking place now, one of the most popular and sought after things that we're getting feedback on in our North American office. In relation to a market like China, for example, one of the most popular bloggers from China, Fan Yibo, came over last year. He's got an audience of 77 million people. That was a unique opportunity to speak to a very big audience. We put together, in association with the tourist boards, the itinerary that he'd undertake. Very positive articles written, a very big audience that we were able to deliver to. In relation to the two audiences that you mentioned, for example, the cultural curious audience, we have a relationship with the Telegraph and the Guardian in Britain, where we have regular features that appear on a series of about fortnightly or monthly basis, promoting the highlights of what there are in the destination. It'll tend to be the finer things in life. That's what you would be promoting, and there are plenty of examples in Northern Ireland that would tick the box in relation to that. On the social media side of things, we had a campaign called Crack Belfast. It was about 48 things you could do in Belfast, and it was high octane, high energy, put out on video demand on channels like Channel 4. All of these things have KPIs on them. They all have measurement in relation to every single campaign that we do.
Thanks very much. Mr. Kinahan. Johnny.
Thank you very much. And let's say it's fantastic hearing all the great things that we're doing. And I think doing an excellent job at the top end. My concern is when we come down to the lower, more local items. And if I can just ask, on your figures, I'd ask some questions here on are overnight stays a good guide to go by on number of people coming to Ireland?
We, a number of years ago, took an in-depth look at this as to what's the most appropriate measure of measurement. And I think overnight stays is a reasonable proxy for the amount of business, but I think you have to start drilling into each market to see, what's actually happening. Because when you get into the overnight stays, you find that you break them down into people who are coming to visit friends and relatives, which is of interest to us, but not the key interest. The key interest to us is the holiday maker, people who are coming here on their actual holiday. And what's even more interesting is the actual revenue that's accruing from those holidays. So it really is about spend, more importantly, but also about holiday makers. And what's encouraging for us, that whereas in the first 9 months of 2014, overall numbers were up 3%, the spend from markets like Great Britain were up in double digits, which is very encouraging. I think the other aspect that's critical to the figures as well is the level of business that's coming via the Republic of Ireland and the measure of that. And we're working with NISRA and with colleagues in Tourism Northern Ireland and Fáilte Ireland to make sure we try and improve the actual measurement, particularly of that cross-border element, difficult component.
The reason I ask, because the answers I'm getting at this end in Northern Ireland, both on expenditure on overnight trips and of the number of overnight trips, are not verifying the same figures that you're giving us. For example, Northern Ireland residents go for Republic of Ireland, it goes from 9%, this is from 2008 to 2013, up to 12, then 15, then 9, then 10, and then down to 8. We get very different. Everything, this is 2013, everything has flattened out and doesn't look as rosy as you're putting it. We've got these great events all happening, with masses, it seems, from your figures coming to all those events. But when it comes down to the actual people staying here, whether it's from Northern Ireland, Great Britain, or the Republic, we've got very different figures. I mean, I'll give these to you afterwards, but what I'm really leading up to is we seem to spend our whole time looking at the big events. And if you come down to whether it's shooting and fishing, now I chair the all-party group, or did chair the all-party group on country sports, each of those bring in, I think, something like 40 million. We don't seem to be doing anything to encourage people to come to the shooting and fishing throughout the island of Ireland, which really shows off the beauty. I then have to declare an interest, both living in a historic house and having been chair of the Historic Houses Association for GB, but here in Northern Ireland. One of the biggest draws are the historic buildings and the history. Again, we don't see anything telling us the number of people coming, staying and going to see those. The tours coming into Belfast on the ships, coming for one day, see the same places and go out. There's a whole mass of places out there that aren't being included. If you run that on then to the bed and breakfasts and all the local things, we don't seem to have anyone really adding the add-on to the big events. So if you're coming here for the golf, which I long to get to one of the games or to watch them myself, there's nothing pushing for all the others. We seem to be missing out. And that's really what I'm... And then you get the art galleries, and another world I used to be involved in. We don't seem to have a low-level but broad strategy, getting all these people to stay a bit longer, spend a bit more, other than on the big events.
First of all, there's a couple of issues that have been raised there. My only remit exists in relation to overseas marketing. I have no remit on the island of Ireland or for Northern Ireland. So in relation to the figures from overseas, the number of holiday makers last year was at a record level. There's no dispute in relation to that. In relation to all the attractions that we speak to, and we get regular presentations from them, for example, the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre, Titanic, all the numbers that we are seeing are stacking up in relation to theirs. So in relation to just trying to get a lens to see, you have to do this reality check with the numbers to make sure that they're being felt by the industry. And on the overseas side, they are. I think in relation to some of the types of product that you mentioned, country houses, gardens, they're fantastic products and they feature extensively, particularly in markets like North America and markets like GB, and they will feature prominently on our website. And what we are encouraging tour operators to do as well, particularly, is trying to increase more Northern Ireland inventory into their programmes where they may not have even programmed it before. And I think there's plenty of evidence of that having been done. But I think you have to keep the shoulder to the wheel. You can never get to the point where you say the job is done. You never can. In relation to the issue of angling and fishing and those sort of game-type sports, You know, we'd love to have more resources to put into additional things. We do attend the Country Life and Gaming Fair over in Britain with a large number of trade. I think that was in Blenheim Palace this year, and we continue to invest in that. And we're always open to talking to opportunities, particularly at the higher end of the market, because, you know, what's good for us is that at the higher end of customer you can get in. I always use the example of, it's great to have many people from Great Britain coming in, but they probably only spend half of what a tourist does in North America, who tend to be at the higher end of the chain. So our strategy is very clear. It's set out in our corporate plan. We invest in those markets that are most likely to deliver the best promotable revenue. In other words, you know, those people who stay longer and spend more, and therefore North America and mainland Europe actually provide our best tourism prospects, certainly in the medium term. Great Britain is very important from a volume perspective, but North America and mainland Europe, particularly from a holidaymaker perspective.
I really make that point because all your presentation was the big stuff, which is fantastic and absolutely great for Northern Ireland, but there is this perception that everything else is secondary and forgotten about. Then if we can move to a different angle, do you lobby the other departments in Ireland when it's all very well having Tourism Ireland pushing for Northern Ireland as part of a section, but when you make changes, or when the Irish make changes, things like air passenger duty, or they're going to build a new rail network to the main airport, it knocks on enormously here. Now, I have one of the big airports in my patch, the Belfast International Airport, but all of them, and their number of visitors, I think the figure I had went down 47%, or rather your figures of people from Northern Ireland went up 47% of people flying from the airport, in that we may get a fair shot of how much you're spending in Northern Ireland, but all the other things that government does knock us on. Do you ever lobby hard and work hard with your other departments in Ireland to make sure that there aren't the side effects, so that we're still kept in parity with a fair go?
We don't have a role as a lobbying organisation, like we are a public body, but we do have a quarterly meeting with both our sponsor departments, the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport in the Republic of Ireland, and the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment, and those issues would get aired, but it's not a role to lobby them. I know from talking to the tourism industry across the whole island of Ireland that the issue of air passenger duty has been a major talking point, and I think you always use the example of Great Britain, where a flight from London to Belfast has got an APD of £26 before anyone starts to get any cost back, so to speak. And a similar flight from London to Dublin is £13. So in a low-cost airline business, that's a lot of margin, so to speak. And I know the VAT issue has been exercised in the industry here as well, whereas in the Republic of Ireland it was reduced from 13.5% to 9%, and it's 20% here. But I don't have a role in lobbying, but I mean, we're obviously aware of what the issues are and the tension, I suppose, that they cause and the concern they cause, yeah.
Thank you. I've got to nip out to another meeting, so nothing.
Mr. Dunn, Gordon.
Thanks, Chairman, and welcome again. Niall and Shane, I think first of all express our thanks to your support for the Circuit of Ireland rally. I think you all recognise the excellent job that you do in supporting that and how the event has developed. It's actually been launched this morning at Lisburn, the official launch of it. And you know, on event tourism, just maybe you could mention the significance of event tourism. I think it's highly significant, and the spin-off that we get from an event like the rally, which is now around the European Rally Championships, you get competitors coming in from across Europe. They bring their families, they bring their friends, and when they get a sample of rallying here in motorsport, they go away with good memories and go away with a very positive message. And again, I think the important thing is the television coverage. You understand it gets about 14 million people watching it, and the excellent visual promotion of aerial shots of Northern Ireland. I'm sure you recognise the value of that. So I think it's important that we do more to promote events. I think in many ways, we don't realise the significance of them, how that you're bringing people in and they spin out from it. So I'd like something further on that. Something I think is significant now, you speak quite quickly, and I don't think we caught all the details, but you mentioned about the figures of airport seats has dropped significantly. Now that's quite alarming. You talked from 107,000 down to 85,000, is that right, in Northern Ireland over a period? Yeah.
I'll just get the exact figures so I have them for you. Sorry for speaking quickly. I hadn't realised, Chairman's conscious had a lot to say. But essentially what's happened is that The number of seats, we do a survey twice a year, basically, on the number of seats that are coming into the airports during what's called the winter schedule, which will obviously be quieter, and the summer schedule, which is the peak season between March and October. And in the summer of 2010, just by way of example, there were 107,000 seats per week coming into airports in Northern Ireland, and that's now declined to 85,000 seats a week. That's a drop of 23,000 a week. That's a lot.
An awful lot, yeah.
The Republic of Ireland, it's gone up by 48,000. Now, there are a number of factors here. There had been a decline generally in the airline business around that 2010-2011 period. The Republic of Ireland had seen a big decline as well. But obviously, in the last year or so, we've seen a turnaround in the number of seats available into Dublin, particularly. Big concentration in Dublin. So, I mean, it's a strategic priority of ours. It's stated in our plan. Minister Foster is aware of it. That we want to work with airports and airlines to ensure two things. First of all, that we can help in delivery of new routes, and secondly, ensure that we secure the viability of existing ones. That's why we do cooperative campaigns with carriers into airports here, where they're prepared to match the funding with ourselves. And we're also happy to case make with airports for new routes as well, and we're doing that all the time. And we played a very active role in relation to the new services, for example, with KLM. That are coming in this summer, and also Vueling, and also the new service coming in from Liverpool too. And we continue to work behind the scenes with the airports. But it's the airport is the main driver, so to speak, in talking to the airlines. Our role is to come in behind and make sure we try and support as much as possible new route development, and also sustaining existing ones.
Yeah, I think we're all very much aware of the challenge of Dublin Airport to Northern Ireland airports. Is the cost, landing cost, is that a significant factor?
I wouldn't have the facts in relation to that. You need to talk to the airports on those issues. But I know that I certainly know in relation to Dublin Airport, their schemes are fully available online in terms of what they offer in terms of discounting. So there is, I mean, state aid guidelines come into this area. So
yeah, those figures are significant. The lesser number of seats available, that has obviously a significant impact on tourists and the ability to get people here.
But there's a direct correlation. There's always been a direct correlation between the number of airline seats and the number of tourists coming into a destination. Yeah, that's certainly a factor.
Just moving on, Chair, the promotion of Northern Ireland as an identity, I think we are concerned that in many ways Northern Ireland gets lost in the bigger package of Tourism Ireland. What assurances can you give us that Northern Ireland is clearly a major factor in what you're promoting?
No, I've no concerns about it. I've no concerns about it whatsoever. I mean, we've heard that repeated a number of times, but certainly I could give you a presentation that will convince you. If you want me to come up again, I can show you more colourfully, so to speak, what we're doing. And if anything, there's absolutely no.
You can convince us that we're getting a fair share.
Oh, you get more than a fair share, I can assure you. Absolutely,
I wouldn't think
more than a fair share. Well, you'd have to see it. I've seen it at first hand, and I know our own board have discussed this issue many times, and it came up even at our last board meeting as well. And there's been enormous efforts made in relation to what needs to be done to promote this part of the island, and even in relation to statistics. I mean, Northern Ireland receives 21% of the total visitors coming onto this island. What's more important is that the number of holidaymakers that come to Northern Ireland has been increasing steadily over the last number of years in terms of the overall visitors to the island.
Just on that point, if I could, Gordon, just there's two challenges. One is obviously whenever people, as you've outlined there, the number of people who are coming into Dublin increasingly, and you can understand that. It's convincing those people to come up north and be part of that package and take advantage of what's available in the north. But then, secondly, what about your own budget? I know you've been subjected to a few cuts there, and clearly at a time whenever there's so much potential to be realised, you don't want to arrive at the point where the brakes are put entirely on you.
Yeah, I mean, the budget has been falling over the last 6 years now, and is about 26% lower than it used to be. That's required us to, evaluate very carefully all the activities that we participate in. Heading into this particular year, where the Northern Ireland contribution will see a reduction of £2.1 million to approximately 11.7 million. Sorry, yeah. So that's in this calendar year of 2015. So that will require further adjustment and refinement of plans, and our board has signed off on the business plan for the year. We're still sticking to our targets, mind you. We feel that there are a lot of other positive factors out there, like reduced prices of oil will lead to sustained air routes, but it's going to require an awful lot of work, an awful lot of hard work, and we're up for it, Chairman. But it's a very tough task in this business. It's very competitive, and there are an awful lot of other competitors out there that are spending more than us.
Okay, thanks for that. Gordon?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just finally on golf tourism, obviously with Graham McDowell and Rory McIlroy and so on, you have mentioned it. What more can be done to try and promote Northern Ireland as a resort for golf tourism? I'm very much aware recently of the demand for visitors that come to Northern Ireland to play on links courses. Are we doing enough to promote those sort of opportunities? And,
Yeah, I mean,
I think more could be done to try and promote the good name of Northern Ireland as a place for golf.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking to Tourism Northern Ireland about a new golf strategy, and it'll require a number of things. I mean, there's obviously some top world-class courses here. Royal County Down, Royal Portrush frequently appear in the top 10 golf courses in the world. The island of Ireland frequently has 10 courses in the top 100. So there's a very, very good, strong message for golf, and particularly in markets like the United States. But there are good opportunities as well in markets like Scandinavia, markets like Germany, value golf in places like Great Britain, and it's one of the top, probably one of the biggest investments we make in terms of sports tourism. But it is a budgetary issue as well, Chairman. You know, when you've got £2 million less, you won't be able to do more. It is about where the best channels are and where the best return on investment is.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Right, Gordon. Martin, were you looking to make a point on back of some of this stuff?
I was going to ask a question, if that's okay, Chair. Are you? Yes, yes.
Just on what Gordon was...
No, generally.
Oh, right, right. Well, see, I have a couple of other speakers in front of you here, but sorry, I thought you were indicating to come in on the front.
No, I don't want to. I wouldn't like to disagree with Gordon so early in the morning.
Oh, not at all. All right. Mr. Humphrey, William.
Thanks, Chairman. Now, good to see you again. Shane, you're very welcome.
Always.
Thanks for your presentation. Can I just ask, in terms of tourism, you mentioned that the island of Ireland, in terms of the economies of both jurisdictions, was it 1.6 billion into the respective economies and 43,000 jobs? Is that right?
Yeah, the overall tourism industry, 1.6 billion to Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the Republic of Ireland. Now, if you're taking overseas domestic, the entire tourism business to the Republic of Ireland is worth 5 billion euros. If you were to take the overseas bit only, okay, so in other words, leave out the domestic bit and the Republic, the on-island bit for the sake of argument, the projected figures for 2015, the revenue is about £4 billion overall for the island of Ireland, and for Northern Ireland is about £552 million.
Okay. Can I ask for a copy of those figures?
Sure, yeah.
I've written them down, but I would be keen to get them. And that growth is exponentially, unsurpassed in terms of the local economy, and that's hugely welcome. So all of those people involved, including yourselves and the Northern Ireland Tourist Board, as was, and the Minister and so on, have to be hugely congratulated, and local councils for the work they're doing, particularly Belfast. The key thing in terms of attracting tourists to come, because cultural tourists are well over 50% of the tourism attraction out there in terms of securing those people coming here, and we are unique in Northern Ireland. And at last, I think the diversity of Northern Ireland is something which is seen as a strength as opposed to a weakness. Connectivity, though, is obviously a weakness, and you've alluded to that. And there's an issue about flights to mainland Europe and to North America. Is there more that can be done to address that? I mean, the Minister was here a couple of weeks ago, and I put that question to her. Is there more that can be done?
I think there's a lot being done at the moment. It's a very competitive environment out there in relation to where people place their aircraft, and it really is a matter of ensuring that air access remains a top strategic priority. I think it is. I mean, I've spoken to the Minister on it many times, and in our own area as well, that this is one of the key drivers of tourism growth. And we're in active dialogue with the airports all the time, across the whole island in relation to where the opportunities are.
So what progress has been made? If we get on a flight, say, to Amsterdam or wherever it is, and you've lots of people leaving here to go there, on the return flight when you're coming home, how full are those aircraft that are coming back to Belfast?
Well, in relation to the new service from Amsterdam from KLM...
I'm only using it as an example, but I'm talking about generally, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have statistics here for inbound individual flights. I'm not quite sure how commercially that's available, so to speak. But in relation to the new flights, for example, We will put in place a promotional plan with Vueling in the case of Barcelona and in the case of KLM into Amsterdam. And what's significant about the KLM one is that that brings you into a much bigger international network as well, because it's a hub airport. So we will be doing cooperative campaigns promoting Belfast, not just in Amsterdam, but also in other cities in the world. And KLM have a huge network. Their social media presence is far bigger than ours even. So to actually be able to leverage that investment will be significant from our perspective. But it's in our interest to ensure that the inbound leg of that flight is as full as possible.
I'm not sure in terms of the sponsorship of the Irish cricket team will be very good at securing tourists coming from the West Indies, given the result last week. In terms of the standalone branding, Mr. Dunn has made position clear, and there are concerns, and I know that you're confident from your perspective as Chief Executive that the Northern Ireland gets, the maximum out of the money that goes in. I would very much welcome the presentation you talked about, certainly in terms of whether it's to this committee or in terms of our own party. We'd be keen to see that presentation and would appreciate that, because one of the things I remember when I was in the OFM-DFM committee, I think I'm right in saying that the brand Titanic is bigger than the Northern Ireland brand or the Republic of Ireland brand out there globally. And I would have thought Titanic would be something which, and you didn't mention it in your presentation, but I would have thought having that would be a huge opportunity for us to sell Northern Ireland, in that, it was fine when I left here, it was only when the English took charge of it. But in terms of the conference tourism, can I ask you a question? That's hugely significant, and I know Belfast City Council and Visit Belfast do a huge amount of work around that. The new facilities that are going to come into the waterfront hall, what impact will that have, do you think, in securing international delegates to come to conferences in the city?
Two things, just on the branding. We'll be happy to give a presentation to anybody who wants to see it. On branding in general, Titanic is a hugely significant brand, no question about that. What's interesting is that if you were to go out and ask people around the world, do they know that it's associated with Belfast, Northern Ireland or Ireland, they probably wouldn't. So I think, when it comes down to it, we have to be very careful about fragmenting our message at a time when budgets are contracting and how many messages we're trying to get out there. There are some people that might say that Guinness is very synonymous with Ireland, but it's not the motivating reason to come here on your holiday. So it's very careful we have to be very careful about what messages that we want to send, what is it that we're trying to say to our customers to convince them to come here instead of somewhere else. But I do agree that I think the Titanic brand is a global one, and I think the more that we can associate that with Belfast, the better things will be in the future. In relation to conference business is really significant, because an average business tourist will spend between 3 and 4 times what a leisure tourist does. They'll frequently bring their partner. They'll probably stay the weekend if there's something on offer. And I think it's fair to say that the team in Visit Belfast have done an excellent job. And we work hand in glove with the team in Belfast, and we just had a meeting with them recently. I was talking to them last week, and they do attend a lot of events with us over in the UK or in GB. And there's a good, clear, focused strategy in relation to that whole very competitive business. Internationally. You're competing with the likes of the Barcelonas, Viennas. Dublin's got a convention centre too. But I think the inroads that Belfast have been making as a conference destination has been very encouraging, and I'm very confident that that will bring a major boost to the city. And I think what we're seeing as well is possibly new hotel bedrooms being talked about in the context of Belfast too. So one thing will lead on to another.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Chairman. So can I just put, I have to leave, but it's nothing to do with you, just to have the Chairman.
Thanks very much. Mr. Flanagan. Phil.
Thanks, Patsy, and gentlemen, thanks for coming. It's good to see you back. I fully support your organisation and the work that you do. I think it's hugely important. And I do think that there's huge sense in promoting this island as a single destination for visitors. I think once you go outside Ireland and Britain, the attractiveness of this place is much stronger as a single contiguous unit, and I think that's where we need to be going. And I certainly want to see more of that. Can you explain how much more attractive it is in terms of trying to get people to come to this island if we were promoting this island as a single destination, in terms of having Belfast and Dublin on the same package, in terms of the Ring of Kerry, the Giant's Causeway and the Lakes of Fermanagh all marketed together, instead of trying to promote two disjointed campaigns?
We try to ensure that we don't do anything that's disjointed, and the important thing is that we're promoting to a very sophisticated audience overseas that are looking to choose somewhere to go on their holidays, and they need to be inspired. They're not looking for a history lesson, and they're not looking for a geography lesson, and it's about inspiration. That's what we're trying to do in Ireland.com all the time, take all the clutter out of it. It's not about trying to tell them about the 100 things there are to do this weekend on the front page. It's about getting them to inspire them to even think about coming to this island in the first place. If we can get more people onto this island and grow the cake bigger, we can all get a bigger slice. And we'll have very little control in relation to what planes go into what airports. But the bottom line is that we are competing against a huge number of destinations out there. And the more we fragment, the more difficult it gets. I think the message is very enriched by all the different things that there are to do here. The vast majority that play to come golf on this island are coming for a golfing holiday in Ireland, and they will choose the entire destination because there is the quality around the whole island. In closer to home markets, it's probably a bit more specific in relation to where people might want to go. But the whole island is an inspirational place for a lot of people. It's a dream destination for a lot of people. Our job is to try to convince them from moving from the dream stage to actually coming. And it's enhanced by having the entire selection of things that there are to do on this island together. From the tour operation community perspective, like a company like CIE Tours International, they'll be selling holidays across the UK and Ireland as packages. They'll sell Scotland and Northern Ireland. They've got a lot of Northern Ireland imagery in their brochures they didn't have before. So that's something that the private sector will make up themselves. But from our perspective, it's about getting a very strong message about everything that there is to do across this island, because I think our offering is enhanced by everything there is to do, as opposed to fragmenting the message an awful lot.
I think the investment you've made in purchasing Ireland.com was hugely important. I think it's a great thing for Tourism Ireland to have. And I think the way that your organisation makes use of new media to promote this island is hugely successful, and I think it's something that you need to continue to champion. These are certainly ahead of most other organisations in your industry in terms of how you utilise social media. But in terms of the Wild Atlantic Way and the Causeway Coastal Route, for me that's an example of where there was a disjointed campaign. It doesn't make any sense to me that we had two separate marketing campaigns for what is essentially one coastal driveway. And is there any logic for there not being a single coastal route around the west and north of the island, or was it merely protectionism from people on both sides of the border?
The Causeway Coastal Route opened, I think it was in 2012. The Wild Atlantic Way opened last year. They're two separate signposted routes, so to speak. We were out promoting the Causeway Coastal Route as soon as it opened. It's stunning in relation to what it has to offer, and all the experiences along it are all improving all the time. And when Goblins comes along this year, it's going to be even better. The Wild Atlantic Way was a distinctive route as well. We do promote them together. It depends on what market we're in, and it depends on what channel we're in. We looked at the area of television, for example, in Germany and France. A decision was made that in a 30-second television advertisement campaign, it's impossible to give a history and a geography lesson and to include everything. So we decided that last year we would use the Wild Atlantic Way as the driver, whereas 3 years ago we'd use the Causeway Coastal Route.
But I hear what you're saying, Niall, but in terms of a coastal route, if you're promoting the Wild Atlantic Way, surely it makes sense to bolt on the city of Derry and the Giant's Causeway onto that drive. It makes it just far more attractive for potential visitors. There's bound to be synergies there in having some sort of a coordinated campaign to promote what is effectively one drive around the island.
There is, and in relation to publications where we would do work in the likes of, say, the Telegraph or the Guardian, where we did a map in the Middle East and Australia, the two routes are on the one map of the island of Ireland. They're there, and you can everything.
But they're not on your website.
Pardon me?
On your website, they're not.
No, and the bottom line is that they're two distinct routes, and they're two distinct, mini brands, so to speak. And we talked to the two tourist boards about it. If people want to join them up, you've got one route, but at the moment you've got two. But just as we, might do work in promoting something in the southeast in relation to heritage, in working with that part of the island, it doesn't mean we can't work with somebody else either. I think what we're trying to do abroad is send a message about Ireland.com, but there are an awful lot of bits of the jigsaw in relation to that enrich the experience when you get here.
In terms of the Global Greening Initiative, I think that's a very simple campaign that probably doesn't cost very much apart from the promotion of it, but it's very clear what happens. And around the world, a number of iconic places are going green. And in Ireland we have places like Trinity, the Guinness Storehouse, GPO, the Mansion House, and then the ones that you've named up here in the north. But still, this building doesn't go green. Last weekend it went blue and red for Red Bull. But it doesn't go green yet for St Patrick's Day. Have you approached the Assembly Commission to try and approve them to put up green lighting here for St Patrick's Day?
Well, again, our remit is overseas. So
Wouldn't work, Phil.
So we don't have a remit in relation to here. I mean, I'd be delighted if more places went green, because I can tell you we got a 30-second clip on NBC television 2 years ago that would have cost $2.5 million to buy, and all it did was talked about the destination, and it shines a bit of a light on publicity at that time of the year.
Much green.
And in relation to all the main papers in Britain last year, Times, Telegraph, they all carried all the photographs on the front page of their website. That is money that you just couldn't buy that publicity at all. So the more that people can do, the better. But I mean, a lot of this thing for us is really overseas, about the promoting it overseas. If people want to push here, that's fantastic. Yeah, great.
Would it be helpful?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
In terms of, there's a problem I see in terms of collating visitor numbers, where the CSO come out very quickly and tell you how many visitors the South had in terms of overseas visitors and what they were here for. I think it's out within 6 or 8 weeks of the quarter closing. Whereas here we're waiting nearly 6 months from NISRA for the same statistics to be published. Is there any progress made in terms of harmonising visitor and tourism data collection across the island to give you a better insight into how your campaigns are working, and to give you a more immediate response time to see what works and what maybe doesn't work?
Yeah, in relation to the south of Ireland, I mean, the Central Statistics Office will this week publish figures up to the end of January. So we're about 3 weeks behind the month end, which is good from our perspective. We don't get purpose of visit figures, mind you, for months after that, which is probably something we're always talking to them. We've talked to NISRA and our colleagues in DETI as well, and good progress has been made on that side of the house. I think the tricky bit on the figure side is the cross-border dimension to it, where the NISRA people are relying on both Fáilte Ireland and the CSO, and we're working with them to try and improve that. I mean, timely data is absolutely vital to us, because we are making investment decisions based on this data. We will invest in the markets based on the return on investment that's in those statistics. So the more timely and accurate they are, the better. That's all I can say.
And my final question's around Aer Lingus. Some people in here see Dublin Airport as a challenge. I certainly see it as an opportunity. To have an airport the scale of Dublin Airport in this island is a huge opportunity for us, and I think we need to maximise that. What is Tourism Ireland's opinion on the proposed sale of Aer Lingus and the impact it might have on people coming into this island from overseas?
Well, our Tourism Minister down south, Pascal Donoghue, has already advised the government on it, and a task force has been set up to advise them. So we won't be commenting beyond that. That's our position on it. And also, I mean, Christoph Muller, who's the CEO of Aer Lingus, is actually on our board. So just to prevent any perceived conflicts of interest, I think it's better that we'll leave it to the expert advisory group to advise the Irish government on the sale of the share.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Just one thing, the division bell might go shortly, so just to forewarn you of that, we may be scooting out the door, as has been called. I know you have another meeting in Dublin later on today, so in case things run on a wee bit with divisions and the likes, when do you need to be away from here?
I need to be away from here by 11:30 at the latest.
11:30. Okay. Well, then that maybe sends a message to the rest of us to get questions in as quickly as possible here. I have three people, Fergal, Martin and Paul, to ask questions. So, Fergal.
Yeah, thanks very much. I don't know if I have to declare an interest, Chair, because certainly in a social media context, I follow Niall and have retweeted his tweets, so I don't know if that's me declaring an interest or simply doing my bit.
You're just doing your bit, I think, Fergal.
In terms of doing a bit. But it strikes me that the job that you do is forever changing, and it's, well, you can measure success, you'll ultimately never get to the destination, if you like, because it's always a demand, if you like, or people want more. But in that context, you have to maximise whatever success you have. So it's a bit theoretical, but how are conversations had, for example, around Giro d'Italia, that would increase the attractiveness of Giro d'Italia if it was to come back here, say for family members and others who are more widely involved in the cycling community? And I'm thinking of transport departments or environment departments opening up cycle tracks and things like that. So how are things being levered up, and are those conversations being had at all?
I think they are now. Again, our bit is the overseas
I
conversation.
understand that, but at the same time, you need to make a demand of authorities here to help you catapult back out again.
Yeah. I mean, certainly from where we're sitting, we see the whole cycling area is something that really has taken off across the whole island of Ireland. The area of tracks, greenways are being invested in, and that's a very, very good thing. You take a market like the Netherlands, cycling is one of the key drivers in relation to overseas tourism, and it gives us a very good platform. I think the Giro was very good, not only from a cycling perspective, it was actually very good for the destination because it got Northern Ireland out to a very big audience, it got Belfast out to a big audience. And what was interesting for me, particularly watching it, was the amount of engagement by the local communities across the whole province. And that's something you don't always see sometimes in these big events. But it was actually game-changing in relation to what happened here. And that's what delivery of a brand is all about. It's not just putting an advertising campaign together. It's actually being able to experience the message that we're selling actually on the ground. And that was probably one of the big things that Giro did. It brought the tourism idea and a little bit of fun to local communities that probably hadn't experienced it before. That was a very, very positive thing.
Yeah, but my point is that can illuminate the landscape, you like, on a one-off. And of course, but for however that lasts. But I'm trying to suggest or think about methods where it can be more constantly illuminated and provide a longer-term attraction for both people on the island and people coming to the island. And in that context, for example, the Commonwealth Games is another good example, about how conversations have been had about Healthy Island, for example.
Yeah, again, from our perspective on that one, what we're trying to do a little bit more of is using personalities, because what we're renowned for across the world is our people across the whole island, and that was a terrific example of a video, of people who are young, energetic, full of hope, full of energy, put a very good video together, and it sends out a very positive message about the destination that perhaps people hadn't thought about before. And using brand personalities like even Chris Hadfield, the astronaut who would come here as well, people like Phil Spencer on Location, who's done some videos for us too, is a very good way of getting the message across. I mean, in relation to the investment priorities over the next number of years, there are a number of big ones. One of the most exciting ones that our overseas people are picking up is the Gobbins. I think that's got the capacity to be a real game changer and bring something really new to the North Coast, although it was there 100 years ago. Mount Stewart is going to be another significant addition as well, and the investment in golf. They're just three examples of things that are going to be an opportunity to shine. And we've known about those for some time. They've been factored into our plans. So it's just an example of working hand in glove to make sure that what's happening here is being, getting a big enough shout about in the international marketplace. And we will feed back then, like we have liaison meetings every quarter. We'll meet the Tourism in Northern Ireland team next month, the senior team, and we will feed back our own views in relation to what we think is working and what isn't. So it's a collaborative process, really.
And are government departments listening to you whenever you come back and say you could improve? I just want to know if that conversation has actually been had in a robust way.
Yeah, I mean, we have two sponsored departments, obviously, DETI here and DTAS down south, and the relationship is excellent. I've been at a meeting every quarter for the last 13 years, and any messages that we have to give have always been listened to. I'd have to say, in fairness to them, they've been very good. Yeah.
You touched briefly on the visa programme, particularly in relation to the growing markets of China and India. Can you just elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, so just the background to this is that in the past, last year or before, if you were to travel to somewhere in mainland Europe, you could have travelled on what's called a Schengen visa. You could travel across 25 countries with only one visa, which put the UK and Ireland at a competitive disadvantage, because if you wanted to come to Britain, you needed a UK visa, and if you wanted to come to the south of Ireland, you needed an Irish visa. If you wanted to come to the island of Ireland, you needed two visas. And that was a major competitive disadvantage for this destination. We worked with our colleagues in government departments, and the British-Irish visa scheme was launched in China in December. And what it means essentially is that if you're travelling now as a tourist and you obtain a British or an Irish visa under the BIVS scheme, BIVS, you will be able to travel across the UK or Ireland on a UK or an Irish visa. That's a major breakthrough. It's just started in China, so it's early days yet, and it just launched in India last week, and it'll be reviewed after a number of months to see how it's operating. But I think it's a major breakthrough. And what it means is that we had the Irish President over in China in December. We were able to do a major event with media and tour operators and sell this selling point for them, because we did research in China last year for the first time, and one of the major issues that came up for Chinese tourists in general was the ease of getting a visa and the speed of getting a visa were two of the major factors in choosing a destination. So I think this will help.
And in terms of what the Chinese visitor might like, would casino facilities here help or not?
I need to reflect on that, to be honest with you. I know, gambling is part of the culture in that. I'm not quite sure whether it will be a differentiator for us or not in terms of making a big leap in the number of visitors. Certainly what we know is that the Chinese visitor is interested in ticking off as many boxes on the visitor attractions as they possibly can. We know that things like Titanic have been big for them. The numbers have been very big actually in Titanic. Stately homes are good, things like the Cliffs of Moher down south, Guinness Storehouse. We know that retail is very big for them. So stores like Dublin, places like Brown Thomas, Kildare Village outlet shopping is very, very big. If stores here want to capitalise on Chinese visitors, they will have to deal with language. They'll have to have translated guides. They'll have to consider taking Chinese Union Pay credit cards, because that's another factor in relation to retail as well. Some of the research that we received back in relation to the Chinese visitors. So food is another big factor as well. They will eat European food once or twice. They will want to eat Chinese food, and that's a key factor too.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Archie? And Tesla, we're there.
Thank you, Patsy. Thank you, Niall and Shane. And you've drawn our biggest audience since I've come here, so obviously it's a rock star attendance. Some of us do believe that the secret sauce in Tourism Ireland is promoting the island as one unit, as it were, notwithstanding the good points that Gordon makes. But I suppose my first question is, your budget was cut by 2.1 million by us, I suppose, if we all take responsibility for the budget. If you had that 2.1 million back in your budget, it could be spent, with the exception of Mr McKenna, it could be spent, if you had that 2.1 million in your budget to spend on promoting the north of Ireland, I take it would draw more tourists here. I take it this is the more we spend on marketing, the bigger return we get?
Yeah. Look, this is about visibility. That's the bottom line. We decided not to change our targets because we feel that there's still a lot of positive things happening this year, and we have to put the best foot out. And we feel these are good times for tourism. But we've said it before at our own board meeting. When investment is withdrawn on a sustained basis, it becomes hard to maintain visibility. And it's like any commercial product. When you walk into a supermarket, those people that have the shelf space are more likely to make a sale. For us, we've adjusted our programme in relation to this year. Hopefully, as the economic climate improves, we'll be able to make the case for additional investment overseas. But it's a very competitive marketplace out there. International tourism is growing. People are looking for places to go. And the places that, like any commercial enterprise that invest more in marketing, are more likely to achieve more in sales. But that's the situation we're in. But I think, Chairman, we've seen our budget fall by 28% over the last 7 years. And this year we're predicting the best ever year from a tourism perspective. But it'll be very hard to sustain that sort of success. I think we've made amazing, and I'd like to compliment the 148 staff in Tourism Ireland, especially those across the world who do an amazing job in 22 markets, keeping the shoulder to the wheel in what's a very small destination. The big change we've made from moving from mainstream media channels like television into social media, I think it's a remarkable achievement to be the 4th largest agency in the world on Facebook. You're looking at, the United States is bigger, and we won't get bigger than that, unfortunately, just a sheer size of numbers. Australia, and we're vying for number 3 with UK, which is a major achievement in itself, but number 2 on Twitter and number 2 on YouTube are major channels that we have to make sure we capitalise on, because if we don't invest, we'll slip down the rankings again, and that'll be a concern and a risk.
In that respect, we didn't give you an opportunity to talk about your performance overall across the island. You continue to grow the numbers. You're confident that's going to continue the 15-16 or 2015?
Yeah, I mean, last year was a very strong year for tourism to the Republic of Ireland. We've got full year figures out. Numbers increased by 9%. It puts us within striking distance this year of the best ever year, and we're targeting a growth of 6% in overall numbers for the island of Ireland in 2015. And if that proves to be the case, we'll see 9.1 million people coming to visit the island as a whole, which will be the best ever year, surpassing the peak of 2007.
Just to finish it, I don't want to labour the question of VAT. You've already mentioned that is clearly damaging to us, the high level of VAT on all our tourism products north of the border. I don't want to mention APD, because clearly that's not to our advantage either, that we have our passengers are doing all flights except the long haul into Belfast. But in terms of what Mr Kinahan was saying earlier about the issues with the Belfast International Airport, and I visited recently, met the CEO and then met the owners out in Toronto as well. There are some measures we could take, I presume, which you would be delighted with. If we built a spur to the Belfast International Airport, and they tell me there's actually an old railway line exists there. If we were able to bring our visitors direct from Belfast International Airport into Belfast, I take it you would be supportive of that, and you'd also be supportive of us doing more to bring more flights in. I take it this can only be to your advantage if we market Belfast International Airport better, or find a way to entice more carriers into the airport.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again. I mean, air access is the #1 priority for us as an island. You know, the only way to get here is to fly or come by sea, and about 15% of people come by sea, 85% come by air. And we saw, when the global financial crisis hit and airlines started to consolidate routes, the impact that it had on tourism. Now we're seeing the benefits start to turn the other way. I think this year we'll probably see growth actually in numbers into Northern Ireland airports with some of the new routes that are coming in positive. But I think we have to keep on working together and keeping the shoulders to the wheel in relation to those new routes. Anything that improves internal accessibility is always a good thing. I mean, from a tourism perspective, I think the Belfast Bikes even is going to be fantastic as well for getting around the place. So anything that improves accessibility is good. But obviously we're conscious that all these things require investment, and we'll leave it to others to make those choices.
Thank you, Chair. Those are issues maybe the committee will take up at another time, or what we can do to make our part of the island more compelling as a tourism destination. Thank you.
Paul?
Certainly, if the bell does go, I wouldn't expect these gentlemen to hang about, so I can always get my questions answered through paper and post or email. But the questions I would have would be around the growth in holidaymakers from North America. Have we anything? It's great to have them up 21%, but have we any sort of statistics behind that? And apologies for missing the start of your presentation. You may well have covered this, but do we know where in North America we're getting the increase, and is it a type of customer client?
In relation to the North American market, the market's changed quite a lot over the last 10 years. If I was sitting here, I'm probably talking more from an island perspective, but I think Northern Ireland's probably the same, really. You know, 70% of people 10 years ago would have had an ancestral connection here. Now that's only 30%. Okay, so that's a big change. So 70% of the people coming from North America have no ancestral connection with Ireland anymore, and that's saying something about who they are and where they're coming from. Traditional gateways like New York, Boston, Chicago, they're important as gateways, but the volume of people coming from those areas is probably now in decline. And where we're seeing significant growth now is in markets like California and the southern states. That's aided by, you know, again, very effective marketing by our team over there. You've got connectivity with, you know, carriers that have got great reach into those places. So, for example, US Airways flies from Charlotte into Dublin. That opens up a whole new gateway down in that part of the world. And the connectivity that, you know, Charlotte has into over 100 other gateways, it means that the carriers are saying to us that they're seeing people coming in from, you know, 4 from Denver, 3 from Minnesota. There's a lot of new business that's being won that wasn't there before. We had our first sales mission into Texas last year. Texas is a land of opportunity in itself in relation to not just Irish connections, but also new business that could be won. And in relation to visits to our website, I mean, Texas and California will be the 2 states where we're seeing the biggest amount of traffic at the moment. I think social media has given us a new lease of life as well in relation to the business. And just to put that North American market in perspective, the numbers about 5 or 6 years ago from the United States were about 800,000 to the island of Ireland. This year they're probably nearly tipped 1.3 million. 1 in every 10 visitor coming from the United States to Europe is now coming to the island of Ireland. That's a remarkable statistic in itself. My colleague who runs Visit Britain, we'll be seeing in a couple of days' time, they have 2.9 million visitors from the United States. It used to be 4 million. It's now 2.9. So the island of Ireland is 1.2, and our next door neighbour, who have a terrific heritage product too, it has to be said, have got 2.9. I think we're doing remarkably well. But that's where the importance of investment comes in. We've continued to invest even after big events like 9/11. Ireland and Italy were the only two countries that ever regained their pre-9/11 business, because they're the only two countries that kept investing in the marketplace. And there's a lesson in that for us in relation to what we do overseas.
Okay, and then a question about the enigma of St Patrick's Day, and someone who lives in the shadows, Slimish, and someone who has a rich military history, and whereby St Patrick is very much marked and commemorated. How big an issue is St Patrick's Day for Ireland in its entirety? When what I see is actually having to compete with population centres like Boston and New York, where the North American market would go to New York as opposed to come to Ireland for St Patrick's Day. And how big an issue is it in the island of Ireland, and particularly Belfast, when you have the drink culture associated with St Patrick?
Well, they're good questions. I mean, I think as there's no other place that I know that has a day like this, that has the capacity for cities, civic societies to come to a standstill to mark and celebrate and commemorate and everything on one day of the year. I think, certainly from a tourism perspective, you know, there are two risks that we need to be careful of. One is the drink culture. I think everyone's aware of that. And what I call the paddy-packery, particularly in the United States, which we steer clear of. You know, we are marketing a very sophisticated product here. And, you know, from our perspective, St Patrick's Day gives us an opportunity, when there's a big spotlight on Ireland, to leverage additional publicity and you know, make sure that we're being talked about in the right circles. And we achieve that very well. So, for example, you know, the likes of NBC, ABC, CBS will carry Irish chefs on St Patrick's Day. Food is a great thing to talk about. I mean, that's sophistication, and it's talking to the right audience. I think the issue of Christian heritage is something that could be probably exploited more. And I know some of our colleagues in Downpatrick had an excellent meeting with our team last year, and we have now got some faith-based tourism operators in the States who only last year alone have put 5,000 people through the door of the St Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick, which is terrific, just from very early initial meetings. So there's niche markets like that, because I think the St Patrick story is a very positive one as well. It's good for our brand, and I see only better things coming down the track in relation to it. But I think those risks are there, and we just have to be careful, and certainly Tourism Ireland doesn't want to be associated with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Just one final question then. That's the issue of the euro. The impact of the euro, where it's at. See, that is a major... Well, certainly in one part of the island it mightn't be so bad, but in the rest of in the north here, given that we're sterling zone, do you see that as a challenge?
I think the exchange rates vary all the time over all my years in Tourism Ireland. This year, people coming from Britain and from the United States to the south of Ireland are going to get really good value. But a lot of them will choose their holiday destination not based on the currency. That great value is also available across mainland Europe for people from North America, for people from the sterling zone as well. The whole of Europe offers great value at the moment because of the way the exchange rate has gone. And I've seen this ebb and flow over the years. The critical thing is that we deliver value for money. And value for money is made up of a combination of things. Price is one. It's about the quality of the service. It's about the quality of the food. It's about the quality of the attractions. It's all those things that are the components that make someone go home and say, I had a great trip, and they talk to their friends about it. The south of Ireland suffered from an expensive perception a number of years ago. And just to give you some statistics which are interesting, in the visitor attitude surveys carried out in 1999, 3% of British people coming to the south of Ireland said Ireland was poor value for money. Only 3, that's very good. By 2009, that was 43%. That was a combination of high prices and currency. So I think, you know, the currency is a factor, but it's not the only determinant. And I think what we need to do is, for Northern Ireland, obviously, it won't have that benefit that the Republic of Ireland has, but it's probably going to require people to work harder on the ground to make sure that every single person that comes here has a great time, and we say thanks and we smile to them and send them home really happy, because that's actually the best marketing of all, word of mouth. And it just means, again, tough times require all the shoulders to get to the wheel. and ensure that all our customers have a great time and a great experience. And they generally do. The feedback is very positive.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I just make one? Generally about hotel accommodation, do you feel we have enough hotel accommodation, especially outside Belfast?
The feedback that we're getting generally is that in urban areas, more so Belfast, that more rooms will be welcome. Well, obviously that's a market issue to some extent. The prices are higher at the peak times of the market. I mean, I think we've said, from a personal perspective, I mean, there are probably gaps on the North Coast, particularly, where there's superb golf and superb attractions, that it's probably underpopulated in relation to quality hotels now. Certainly at that 4- and 5-star end of the market, one would have felt, given the quality of the product that's there, that there is capacity for additional hotel capacity. But that's another planning and market issue, so to speak, that's outside of our remit.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, gentlemen, for that. And
Can I ask another question, Pat, or not?
sure, go ahead, Phil, very briefly.
The Taoiseach addressed the British Irish Parliamentary Association yesterday and very clearly stated that his government didn't want to see the British government take Britain and the North out of the European Union. What sort of an impact would the North and even the European Union have on your ability to promote the island of Ireland and the attractiveness of this place for people from across continental Europe to visit Ireland?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I mean, I'll be at the British Irish Chamber of Commerce on Friday, and I know it's going to be one of the top issues of conversation. It's a very hard one for me to answer because I don't know what the implications of that would be from a day-to-day perspective if it was to happen, and how trade would function, so to speak, in a cross-border environment. The bottom line is, I know one thing from a consumer perspective. If people are thinking about coming here on their island, on their holidays, they tend not to get into history and geography lessons too much. They're going to wonder about where they can go. Are they going to have a good time? But I think the implications of Brexit need to be teased out more fully, to see what does it actually mean for the common travel area even. Because that'll be a significant one from a tourism perspective. There's been a common travel area in place since 1926, and will that change? I don't know the answer to that, but they're the things that would need to be teased out, Chairman.
Okay.
But it's a big one on the risk register, all right. I think it's certainly worthy of consideration. It would certainly have an impact of some sort.
Sinn Féin need to answer that question themselves, Chair. But anyway, that's
We're not the ones
Right, we're not going into
British
the
government for
politics.
full out of Europe.
Clearly, one of the things you want is you want to lessen any impediments that people might have, given particularly the figures that are increasingly coming into Dublin Airport there. You want to have every enhancement and every facility for people just to drive up the road without an additional nuisance of further customs post or something to hit on your way up to the north,
I mean, our game is mobility.
Yes,
Everything is
absolutely.
about mobility. And anything that makes the customer journey easier, the better.
Yes.
And anything that puts barriers in place for the customer. Like the visas was a great example in long-haul markets. We don't have a big brand in China or India, and neither does the UK. I mean, they're working on it too, for example. So it makes absolute sense to have one visa for the two. I mean, ideally, it would be great if we were all in Schengen, but that's a bigger hurdle to cross. So for now, the fact that you can come to the UK or Ireland on one visa makes complete and utter sense.
Yes.
To start reversing that, I think it would be problematic for our business.
Okay.
But the other point is, you mentioned research you have done on China.
Yeah.
Is that something that's commercially sensitive, or is that something you can give to the committee if we requested it?
I think that was put out into the public domain already, so we can certainly provide a version of it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I think we've got you on the button there, Niall. It's 11:30, so that's you good to go. Thanks very much indeed, yourself.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much.
Good luck with your work there.
Thank you.
Do keep us informed, just okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we're keeping a watch. The debate's still running there. The Minister's on his feet, so it depends how long he's on. But the next presentation...
Can I just make a suggestion here?
Yes, Phil.
We previously joined with the Oireachtas Committee for Jobs and Enterprise Information in the South to take a joint briefing from Industrade Ireland
Yes.
and its work. And I think it would be useful for this committee to engage with the joint committee, which is responsibility for tourism in the South,
Right.
take future briefings from Tourism Ireland in a joint forum. It would allow us to
Yes.
deal more strategically with the role of Tourism Ireland. That's something we can consider at some stage.
Well, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Not at this stage.
We're not at this stage, by the looks of things.
Noted.
Must have annoyed somebody.
That's fine. Move on.
Great.
Great.
Hold on.
You don't have to.
Wait, have we enough members to
We're still here.
Right, we have. Okay. Right, Phil, you were making a proposal there.
All right. Get on. Thank you.
Right, okay, Jim's saying we can put that on the agenda for next week. Jim's saying these people really have to be out by 12 o'clock, the next presentation that we have?
I can do that, Jim.
Matters rising next week.
Okay, matters rising next week then. Okay, that's good enough.
No, just forget that. Move on.
Better not let the tourist people hear you saying that. The,
Northern Ireland we're interested in.
right. Now, the next item, we have to move very quickly here because we'll try and get as much of this fitted in as possible. The oral briefing from the Consumer Council for Northern Ireland on the Consumer Outlook Index. We have a report by the Consumer Council for Northern Ireland, page 24. Briefing the committee today from the Consumer Council is Cathy Graham, Interim Director of Policy, and Philippa McKeown-Brown, Head of Consumer Skills. Thanks very much for coming along and being with us here today. Now, I'm going to have to apologise in advance because there's likely to be a vote, a division in the chamber, and I'm conscious that you're due to be away by 12 o'clock, and so a bit of a pressure here. So my apologies in advance if things go and draw us out of the room. It's no disrespect to yourselves, it's just we have to drop everything then and go. So please do continue with your presentation and we'll get as much as we possibly can crammed in before the division. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be really brief. So, Chair, I'd like to thank you for inviting us along today and for the opportunity to speak to the committee about the second wave of the Consumer Council's Consumer Outlook research. The actual fieldwork of the research was conducted in November. And this is 6-monthly consumer tracking research which looks to explore consumer confidence in the general economy and certainly the kitchen table economy, so how consumers are experiencing their day-to-day expenses. We see reports from well-known economic commentators that there is economic recovery, but whenever we're speaking with consumers, that's not necessarily what they're experiencing. So we felt it was necessary for us as the Consumer Council to be doing our own research and Northern Ireland specific research, because quite often the Northern Ireland data gets lost in general UK-wide reports. So this research, it explores consumers' concerns, financial pressures, and it also tries to find out that their optimism, financial optimism, or lack of it. So this is only the second wave, so it's a bit early to begin to establish trends, although we have got some of the research going back to about 2008. And in the main, what we're seeing is little movement in consumers' confidence. The growth in the economy is still not being felt in households in Northern Ireland, and there appears to be a definite lag with the macroeconomic growth. We believe that there's still anxiety regarding job security, there's still wage stagnation, and as the research was done in November this past, it kind of coincided with the time whenever lots of announcements were being made regarding cuts in public expenditure. Now, about a quarter of the workforce in Northern Ireland is employed within the public sector, and also the private sector is very reliant on public expenditure to keep it buoyant. So we believe that perhaps that's also a factor in the findings. I think that one of the biggest highlights of this research is there is a perception out there that prices are still high, or perhaps there is just a general lack of confidence that lower prices, such in groceries, food, are not here to stay. So we would be quite happy, given time's short, to pass over to you if you would.
Thanks very much. One of the things, and I was reading through your document last night, thanks very much for the detail included in it, but the concerns that people have, for example, around home energy and energy prices in general, and also running a car. I'm wondering, just at that particular time, the impact of the fuel price drops. When was this taken? If it was taken around November, December time, I'm just wondering, at that point in time, prices were relatively well back. So if people were still, it's obviously still a very big issue with people.
What we found because we looked and tried to chart this on with the drops in prices. Home heating oil in November had dropped a significant amount, but not to the extent that perhaps we're seeing it at the minute or perhaps at the end of January. And the same with petrol and diesel costs. Now, obviously, the home energy costs like electricity, those prices won't have filtered through to household budgets until April, but the prices were starting in November to drop,
yes.
And that's where we're making kind of those assumptions that people are concerned about price volatility. It's still very apparent in people's minds the height that prices reached.
I'm terribly sorry.
We would be more than happy to come back at another time.
What we will do is, perhaps maybe if you tic-tac with the committee staff here, members, if they could get back as quickly as possible after the division just, and we can maybe continue with at least some of your
Maybe
presentation.
10 minutes or so. Isn't it?
Aye, it'll only be about 10 minutes or
Okay.
so. That's okay. Thank you. Suspend the proceedings.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 29.
Thank you. Sit very quick.
Was a word too.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. So, right, we had Mr. Frew.
Okay, thank you. And I know you're pushed for time, so I will be brief. I take the conversation before the bell obviously was about the fuel costs, and of course that has changed dramatically since November, Christmas time. I think I'm saving 30, maybe 40 in a week on fuel costs with regards to car, and then also heating oil too. But when you say home energy, I take it that's all about electricity.
Well, it's everything. So it's home electricity, gas, domestic gas, as well as home heating oil.
So that's all of them.
Yeah, it's all packaged, bundled together.
Right. Okay. Now, with regards to the electricity costs for consumers, I know it's home energy, but as a consumer council, do you represent all consumers, that being domestic and commercial industry? Yes.
Yes.
So if 39%, and I see 40 here in July, that was one of the biggest issues for them around the cost of energy, with everything you've caveated. If that is one of the biggest issues, whereby in a league table of European countries for home domestic energy costs we're pretty middle of the road, but for industrial we're right up there, second only to Italy. Can you give us a breakdown of domestic and industrial that has spoke to you?
This research was solely done on the domestic consumer side. Now, we know anecdotally and through working with different partner organisations that energy costs for businesses, especially the large industrial usage where they are paying amongst the highest costs in Europe, that energy costs are a huge concern. Now, we know that the regulator, along with the regulator in the south, is currently reviewing the single electricity market, the ISAM. So we are keeping a very keen interest on that, but we are very well aware of the contentious issues within that.
And that leads me on to my next question in that regards to the tariff for which we all pay as consumers, where we are all charged the same per kilowatt hour. But in the Republic of Ireland and in other nation states, Germany, for instance, there are differences in our tariff, the tariff for which we pay. Any change in a tariff in this country could well mean that there be a differential between domestic consumer pays and industrial consumer pays. What's Consumer Council's thoughts on that? Any change or tweak to a tariff?
Well, I think that from what we understand, that the reasons for the, I suppose, domestic consumers being around that median in European prices and the industrial being at the higher end is about the allocation of costs on the network side, and they are equally cost reflective for both domestic and non-domestic. Now, we don't think that domestic or non-domestic should subsidise either one, but we are really keen to work with the other stakeholders in this to make sure that costs are fair. They need to be they need to be fair, and at the end of the day, large industrial users, all their costs are ultimately passed on to the consumer. But if costs are prohibitive for them to be operating out of Northern Ireland, that's a huge concern for the Northern Ireland. So, as I said, we're keeping both keeping a keen eye on this review by the regulator and the regulator in the south on the ISAM, and we are working because we don't want to be getting into a situation where we are at loggerheads with some of the business representatives. We want to work closely with them so that we get to a position that is of equal fairness and for the benefit of both domestics and businesses.
If, for instance, we were to lose a large industry due to energy costs and maybe employing up to 500, maybe 1,000 jobs, that overnight then puts 1,000 families in poverty, let alone fuel poverty.
Absolutely.
How big an issue is it for the Consumer Council?
Well, one of the other issues are where large industrials are talking about coming off the grid.
Yeah.
And that then adds more cost on for all consumers. So that's an issue for us as well. But it is one that we're working on and that we're.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Paul. Now, I have two more people asking questions, so if we could have the questions first, Gordon here. Questions first,
very short, just
and
following
then
from Paul's and
we can
on
pick up from the answers from yourselves. So we'll
Right,
take questions first, right, Phil?
I was speaking to Aidan some time ago about the issue of both electricity and water charges for commercial customers, and there was some discussion that the Consumer Council were going to work with manufacturing NI to try and improve the voice of consumers of all types to try and sort out some of the problems that people were facing with both NI Water and electricity suppliers. Can you give us an update on that work?
Okay, we'll take the questions first, please, Catherine.
Yes, just any indicators of confidence in the property market, and I noticed about 20% are concerned with food. Did you expect that to be higher in relation to food?
Okay, so there we have the two questions. Ron, thank you.
Regarding the work with MNI, that manufacturing NI, that work is still ongoing. We are working with a number of other partners as well, and we will be embarking on quite a specific. We're already doing some work, but we're going to be continuing that work next year on water efficiency and energy efficiency, because if you can save energy, your bills are going to be lower, but such a large percentage of water bills sometimes or such a large percent of energy bills sometimes are about heat and water. So if you can also be a bit more water efficient. So there's a whole programme of work.
But around the whole issue of, say for example, the Consumer Council got the Western Trust $250,000 back because of being double charged for water in and out in Gavin. Is that something you're working with manufacturing NI to try and sort out?
There's more work to be done there regarding sort of raising awareness that we can take on board their complaints, and manufacturing NI we're looking amongst their membership to see if there were any issues outstanding. So that work's ongoing.
Keep us updated on that.
And yeah.
And it's not just manufacturing NI as well, it would also be Northern Ireland Retail Consortium, for example, Pubs of Ulster, that we're getting that message out to. Just letting people know that we are there to represent businesses as well as consumers, so it's a big area of our work. And just to clarify, when we say next year, we mean this year's work programme. So.
Okay. Gordon.
Property market was one.
Yep, property market. There is there's a report that has recently gone from DSD to the Minister. There's a task force on repossessions. Negative equity in Northern Ireland is the highest in the whole of the UK. But again, this is another one of those areas where if there's a UK-wide report, it very often masks the extent and the effect of it in Northern Ireland, whereby it's not, repossessions, negative equity isn't a concern. Well, actually, if you look back to the housing crisis in Northern Ireland, we went from the lowest prices in the UK to prices that matched pretty much the southeast of England back down to what are some of the lowest prices again. So we have an awful lot of people that are extremely concerned about high levels of mortgage. They're mortgage prisoners. They can't remortgage. They can't get a better deal. And if interest rates go up, then this is really, really concerning, because on average, Northern Ireland households have about £88 a week less disposable income than the rest of the UK. So if interest rates go up at all, that disposable income for mortgage house owners is going to be completely swallowed up. So that is a big concern, and something that we would be very keen that if there are UK-wide research papers done, that there is a reflective and representative sample size taken for Northern Ireland, so that then those pieces of research can be broken down regionally and proper and true comparisons made.
Okay.
Regarding food prices, that is one of the very interesting findings of the research, because food prices increased exponentially from about 2007 up to August 2012, but since 2012, August 2012, they've actually reduced again by 10%. But for some reason, consumers aren't feeling that in their pockets. They're not witnessing that on the shelves. We reckon that is one of the, it's anxiety regarding stability of prices. Are these lower prices here to stay? There's a perception that they haven't come down.
I think also it's one of the most visible things to consumers. We can't see and visualise our electricity bill, but we can see what's in our trolleys and our baskets every week. So we're very engaged with food prices, more so than maybe other essential spend. It's the most elastic part of our budget as well. So what you'll see throughout the report is that where consumers are positive, it's often about the things that they have control of. So whether that's making cutbacks, reducing impulse buys. At the same time, it's still a concern because they're seeing it day in, daily.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, ladies.
And I'm just conscious of the time for yourselves, just a couple of minutes past 12 there, so if that's it, thanks very much indeed, and indeed for the continuing engagement from yourselves at the Consumer Council. It's always deeply valued by this committee. Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, next item is agenda item number 7, the Insolvency Amendment Bill preliminary review. And the committee has previously considered the clause in the bill in detail, has raised a number of queries in the bill which are responded to by the department, and the department has agreed to bring amendment to clause 11 and clause 13 of the bill, as suggested. Now, the department's response to query on clause 11 following comments made by the statutory rules is included at page 39. Okay. And then, so table today is the clause by clause table, and if members are content with the proposed amendment to clause 11, that's the one that's contained at page 40 in your documentation. So this is in line with the Examiner of Statute suggestion. So agreed then to that one.
Great.
Okay. Now, next item then is agenda item number 8. That's formal clause by clause consideration, which we have done, but we need to put this to the committee. And I referred members to the clause by clause table for the bill for this item, which is included in your table papers. And what my intention is to go through each clause and schedule the bill to seek the committee's position on each. Now, this is table papers. So anyway, this is first item or first section is relating to the provisions relating to communication, and to ask members if the committee is content with clauses 1 and 2 as drafted. Is the committee agreed? Agreed. Requirements relating to meetings. To ask members that the committee is content with clause 3 and 4 as drafted. Committee agreed? Agreed. Reports in individual voluntary arrangements. To ask members that the committee is content with clauses 5 and 6 as drafted. Committee agreed? Agreed. Powers of Liquidator and Trust, to ask members that the committee is content with clauses 7 and 8 as drafted. Is the committee agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Miscellaneous, to ask members the committee is content with clauses 9 and 10 as drafted. Is the committee agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Then to ask members that the committee has agreed with the content of clause 11, deeds of arrangement as amended, and is content with the wording of the proposed amendment, which we have dealt with there. Committee agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
To ask members that the committee is content with clause 12 as drafted. Committee's agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed. To ask members that the committee is content with clause 13 after acquired property as amended and is content with the wording of the proposed amendment. Committee agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. To ask members the committee is content with clauses 14 to 17 as drafted. Is the committee agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. On supplementary, that the committee is content with clauses 18 to 21 as drafted. The committee's agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Schedules, to ask members that the committee is content with schedules 1 to 3 as drafted. Is the committee agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. On long title, that the committee is content with the long title as drafted. Is the committee agreed? Agreed. Okay. The draft report of the bill will be considered now then at next week's meeting. Okay, thanks very much for that. Now, on the inquiry into economic growth and job creation in a reduced tax environment, included in the papers today is the response from the Committee for the Environment to the inquiry. That's at page 51. And also we have indeed it's a very interesting response there from the on the strategic infrastructure plan, from the draft infrastructure plan for Northern Ireland. That's the Regional Development Committee, presented the 8th of October. Some very interesting detail included there, and some interesting challenges as well. I know some of us may well have already encountered some of these as regards development right throughout the north, but it's a very important document here which does highlight in stark detail the challenges and indeed some of the interests that are facing us. So, can we incorporate those, if members are happy enough? First of all, the response from the Committee for the Environment. We have an email from an individual response to our inquiry at page 54. And on the correspondence in regard to DRD on their NI Strategic Drainage Infrastructure Plan, that's at page 43. The clerk had contacted the clerk to the Committee for Regional Development. The committee had considered the paper on Strategic Drainage Infrastructure Plan at its meeting on the 8th of October, and it does highlight very major insufficiencies and shortcomings, particularly in the Belfast area. So, if members are content to include the paper in evidence for the inquiry, okay.
Great.
And
Chair,
we,
on that,
yes,
it is very, very interesting when you read it. But also, could I ask that included within or evidence is the information I had requested some weeks ago now around the infrastructure around the grid. You can remember when the offshore wind turbine farm people were up talking about the reasons why they weren't going ahead. I had asked at that time, or requested at that time, that we get details of all Northern Ireland substations and the capacity to either upload or download from that. That has come into significance even this week again, because I'm representing a business who have just received planning permission for a turbine, who are now experiencing massive delays in NIE, not simply because the cost is going to be too much, because NIE are refusing to give them a price because they suspect that the upgrade that would need it for this particular substation would not be able to be put onto the business.
Right.
And the problem here, and this is where it comes into our inquiry, is that this substation caters for an industrial estate which is only half filled. And if a company that is having problems in that industrial estate connecting a single wind turbine to this substation, how are they ever going to build new buildings and for any economic growth So, and that's the Woodside Road substation, which is Invest NI land.
Yes.
Just behind Michelin. So, industrial estate is only 50% capacity, but it looks like we won't be able to get any more businesses into that because of the substation.
And Paul, on that, now, there was two things that I was going to do before I was off the regional development one.
Yes.
I think it would be important, they have outlined a number of substations that need upgrading there. That's sewage disposal work,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
I think it would be important we got the location of those.
Yeah, can I ask, I asked a question around that, the water treatment works,
Aye.
a number of months ago, and that would be on the questions. It might be interesting
All
for
right.
any clerk to look up the questions on that, because I had asked for a full list of water sewage plants and
Aye.
systems and give their capacity, and I received that through a question.
Oh, good. That'll be helpful. So if we can get elicit that information. Now, to get back to, you've identified a problem there, and it's a problem which has come up with me, and we had the Dale Farm issue
Yes,
and all that sort of
exactly.
thing. So I really think that whether it's as part of our inquiry or even parallel to our inquiry, we need to hear from NIE. We had them up before around this issue. At that occasion, it was principally turbines and their ability or other ways to connect into the grid, how long it grid to be upgraded, all those sort of things. But I really think it has become an issue already. You've raised it as an issue. I really think we need to hear from them. I don't know whether they've indicated that they're going to give evidence, have they, Jim, to our inquiry?
Chair.
They,
NAE?
No, they haven't. I think it would be important that we hear from them because it's clearly going to become an issue. It already is an issue. So are members content that we invite NIE to give evidence to us as part of our inquiry?
A written briefing?
I think
we've heard enough
that
from
we
them.
hear
to be
from
honest
them.
with you. I think we've heard enough from them.
Aye.
Not seen anything useful. Like.
But I really think we have to keep the P on them, Phil, in regard to this. Now, Jim's saying we have a short time frame to do that, but
I'm not precious as to written or practical evidence session. Written is okay, but what I really would like to see is this chart.
Yes.
All the substations and the capacity.
Right. Now, if members are happy, then Jim's suggesting we may need an extra meeting on this, but if members are happy enough, because this is a big issue, whether it's people in renewables or whether it's people who are trying to expand their businesses, such as Dale Farm and the likes of that. And I had more recently, another one which has come my direction, which is citing, again, their business expansion can't happen because of the insufficient nature of the grid. So, if members are happy enough that we just use our judgment and our timescale here to hear from them, we can't really go and do all this FDI stuff and then not have the capacity to take them, you know?
Absolutely.
If there's a problem there, we have to rectify it. So, so if members are happy enough that we do that,
Chair, what's the proposal?
the proposal is that we invite NIE to give evidence to us around this specific issue. That's the shortcomings of the grid and where it might prove a retardant factor to actual investment. And again, it's in those areas, we've highlighted this before, those areas where investment is required, where it's needed, but can't happen at the moment because of their shortcomings.
I think, Chair, would be appreciate, as an update on a number of the issues that were raised.
Aye.
We're all quite forthright on our
Yes.
concerns, so even for that purpose alone, I think it would be useful to get an update.
Update, but Paul, you've referred to the specific nature of detail of the substations. If we could hear about those substations, the projected upgrade off the grid, where they intend and where are literally the hotspots.
There shouldn't be a problem because what NI Water done for me through that ministerial collection was actually giving me a percentage of the capacity of their water sewage plant. So they were telling me it was 80% full or 70% full.
Yes.
So there's no reason why NIE wouldn't have that information at hand.
Good, surely.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Now, last week we also heard evidence from Manufacturing NI on the transport infrastructure issue. So if we're content to ask the Road Haulers Association to provide written submission to the inquiry and to comment on Manufacturing NI's concern in relation to the A5, A6 and cost of ferry travel. Happy enough with that?
Yep. Agreed.
Now, there was one other issue, and we tried to get some research around it. That's the whole question which was raised last week around the corporation tax for the likes of mutuals and credit unions. Now, at this point in time, I know that the whole question of the corporation tax bill will be coming up in Westminster, I think the week after next, so we're running a wee bit short. I think Assembly Research are having difficulty enough establishing just some detail around this, other than that has been raised already in Westminster. So I'm going to put a proposal to the committee that we emphasise the point, the issues that have been raised around mutuals and credit unions, and that we write to certainly to the NIO and on this particular issue, emphasise how important it is to community development, basically, and reinvestment back in the community. We've heard so much from particularly the credit unions around this matter, right to the NIO, and I think, as well as that, it would be important that we copy, or not copy them in, to write to the Office of First Deputy First Minister, certainly to our own Minister, Detty, and DFP around this issue. And I think I'm putting this proposal because of just deciding in my own mind how's the best way to handle this, and copy all of our 18 MPs into that correspondence as well, because it's a big issue, and like many of these things, if it's not dealt with now, the chances, if there's change of government and that, of it being dealt with is going to be slight, I think, afterwards. And potentially, just as comes into my head, if we could copy the Shadow Secretary of State into that correspondence as well. So are members happy enough with that course of action?
Right, Chair, are we referring here to the corporation tax?
Correct.
Yeah, Progressive Building Society was part of that.
Yes, I was saying they as the mutual, because
right.
I know they raised it because they're a mutual building society.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's what I was referring to,
Yeah.
Gordon, you know,
Right, sorry, yeah.
without naming them specifically,
Okay.
because there might be other mutuals that we're unaware of.
Okay, but they're included, really.
Aye.
Yep.
So that's the thrust of where I was going. So if members are content enough for Jim and myself to work on a draft letter here, and we'll share it with you, and then we'll get it off as quickly as possible, because I'm concerned of just the urgency of the situation, to highlight the matter with them.
Agreed.
Okay, agreed. Yes, Danny.
On a different angle from last week, the research document we had seemed to show us that one of the strengths Ireland had was the freedom of movement and letting skills.
Yes.
And I wondered if we should be exploring more whether we have any barriers, you know, that we're not really aware of. I mean, I would know from the ethnic or party group that there's a whole mass of low-level barriers and problems that really meet people, but are there bigger ones that are stopping people come to Northern Ireland who might have the skills that would help with corporation tax? Because it's one of the key points. I wonder whether we should be trying to get someone to brief us.
I think that document's due back, isn't it? Next week, isn't it? Aidan's presenting to us, Jim.
The one on the South
FDI, yes.
of Ireland. FDI, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you want to raise it then?
I'll raise it then, yeah.
Aye. That's okay. Well, thanks very much for that. Now, agenda item number 10 is matters arising. There are 3 matters noted on the index, which is page 57 of members' packs, and papers for the item are from pages 58 onwards. So, okay. Now, we have the clerks. Okay. Now, the first flight wind document, the papers for which included at page 61 there, we have okay, we have the clerk's brief, page 61, copies of correspondence received from the department, page 62 to 69, and okay, and on that particular issue then, Gordon, you had suggested earlier there that there was some potential to resolve.
Yeah, I understand the Minister is willing to speak to yourself as Chair and to the Vice Chair in relation to the issues that haven't been made clear in the correspondence, and that there are obviously issues that relate to the electricity market reform, so that she is willing to do that.
Oh, that's good. So, yes, Danny?
I mean, I was thinking we expand it to a closed session, or for those in the committee that want to be involved.
Right.
Well, I think if we were meeting, it would be an informal meeting, and I'd have no problem with other members being invited if the Minister was happy enough with it.
I think that's okay.
I don't have any problem with that at all.
I understand we'll all be enlightened in due course.
Very good, Gordon. Somebody was too quick with the marker.
How long is due course?
Very happy with the marker, I think.
We're indeed. So, okay, well then, we'll progress it along those lines and see what emerges then, okay? Thanks for that. Okay. And then, since the response was received from Ofcom on the separate issue, then they have written to ask further clarification on the committee's request. So, if members are content enough for the clerk to respond directly to Ofcom on that. Okay, and if members are content then with suggested actions for the remaining items index.
What are we doing with Ofcom, Patsy? Sorry, I missed up.
That's the
What's your proposed action on it?
that they wanted further clarification on it, and Jim would clarify to them what
Okay.
the issues are.
Fine.
Because they seem happy enough there to progress it further for us and do what they possibly can on that particular matter, insofar as they can. Okay. Right, and just to inform members, tabled today is a paper from Stephen Agnew which provides an overview of the Children's Services Cooperation Bill for members' information. Also tabled on this matter is the Clerk's briefing paper and corresponds from last week's meeting from the committee, the Office of First Minister. So if members are content to agree a response to the OFM-DFM committee at next week's meeting based on the briefing paper from the Clerk. Now, Stephen has apologised to me beforehand. He's one member on his own, so he's in there with the welfare reform stuff today and can't be here. So members are happy enough with that to progress it, and we'll deal with it next week then, sign off on it next week. Okay, agreed then. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 11, EU Matters. The newsletter is at page 72. So if members are content to note, there was one item there. I see the Youth Employment Initiative has proposed making £1 billion from the Youth Employment Initiative available from 2015. So it might be helpful if we could find out, I'm not sure whether it's Detty or whether it's Dale would be going for this, if we could find out just how they've been teed up at whatever the respective department is to avail of that. Particularly important, especially around the skills issue. So happy enough we
I
go
know
with
Stephen
that.
Forey was in Europe last year meeting with some of the DJs
All right.
on this issue, so it might be
Aye.
there might be a useful update to be got there.
Right, happy enough to go that route then. Thank you. I saw there the NI Executive Office in Brussels updates. We have to
Still tweeting?
email. It's the same, huh?
Still tweeting?
What?
I just remember that handling they had with the tweet in the last.
Oh, I know. Aye. So they're apparently they're sending out updates, but you have to email them to join a distribution list. So it might be helpful if they did that sort of off course with the respective committees.
Everybody, not the members. Remember?
Right, well, no, so that it can be disseminated to us or to the members too. It doesn't really matter. So, okay, read then. Now, there are 3 matters on the index for correspondence at page 78. This is from pages 78 onwards. So, we have received a request from Advice NI to brief the committee on the work of its Debt Action Service. So, if members are content to inform Advice NI, the committee's work programme is pretty much full at the moment. However, there may be scope following the Easter recess, unless there's something very urgent and pressing there where we can arrange or facilitate something. Meet with them maybe earlier.
I agree with you, Patsy, but I think they might argue that this is fairly urgent because they're going to lose the contract or the programme work they have with Data. So
I saw that there, but I'm not too sure of just the time frame for that, Phil. Then from 1st of April 22nd, MAS will assume direct responsibility. But if, in the first instances, I'm happy enough to meet them with yourself if we can advance it that way.
Have enough of an informal meeting, and then anybody else that wants to come can come.
If it's a very urgent issue, you know. So, okay. Agreed then, and content with the suggested actions for the remaining 2 items on the agenda then. So, and right, also tabled today is correspondence from the Committee for Finance and Personnel regarding a briefing to that committee by the Consumer Council on banking issues, and from the Minister concerning the reappointment of the Agri-Food Strategy Board. So, if members are content to note those 2 items.
Right.
Agreed.
This isn't in response to the letter we agreed to send at last week's committee meeting, and no? Where we asked what consideration has been given to
I think there's probably a follow-up on that, but we're probably going to get much the same, I think, Phil. This is around
not a
the
response
criteria.
from us?
We haven't received a response from that, I'm sure we haven't.
No, not yet, Chair.
No.
It's just standard one that's been sent to both committees.
Aye, that was around the criteria that you
I was keen to see representation for primary producers on the
Aye.
board, but it appears that's not happening at this stage.
No. Okay, so any other business, agenda item number 13, unless, Paul?
Yes,
Yep.
Chair, just very briefly, you'll know that we had a presentation some time ago from BT around their broadband rollout and their strategic look at things going
Yes.
forward. And they had broke us up into various areas and they were taking us through stage at a time. Now, I had asked at that point many weeks ago, in fact probably months ago now, that we would have a point of contact so that we can contact with regards to our various areas and be able to input some local information into that. Now, notwithstanding all of that, this will be very much a commercial decision by BT where these green boxes will go to, and they'll have to be placed in areas of large population in order to get the most money and good out of them. You wouldn't stick a green box in the middle of a desert, so I understand all of that.
Or a bog.
But the number we got back was for a lady who was actually just the planning manager, and that's basically, she was, if you like, the foreman or the foreperson who actually distributed the work teams.
Didn't decide where they were put?
She didn't.
No strategic?
She had no strategic input.
Right,
She
okay.
basically done the work programme for the work teams.
She managed the engineers.
She managed the engineers who actually were on the ground, and she would have been instrumental in go there one day, go there next. What I wanted was someone that I could speak to who will make a strategic decision about actually where they place the green boxes.
Okay.
And if we can maybe chase up, I meant to do this a couple of weeks ago and I completely forgot about it. But just if we could have somebody at that strategic level, just to liaise with, they don't have to listen to us, they can ignore us if they want, because at the end of the day it'll be a commercial decision by BT. But I would like to at least be afforded the opportunity to represent my constituents, their customers, as to where the areas of need are.
Okay, I'm sure we can get that, surely. Okay, agreed then, we seek that contact and can be shared with other members too.
Good.
Okay, agenda item number 14, the final date, time and place of next meeting. Next committee meeting to take place Tuesday the 3rd of March in room 29 at 10 o'clock. Okay, that's us. Thanks very much, everybody.
This is